right at 2 hours. So there's an hour and a half floating around out there. But as we've talked about on and off microphone over the years, like movies, they take time to make. So there's obviously always a lot more footage than there would be. So there's not truly every work print of a film is a certain amount of time. Like Chris Nolan has said, the original cut of Dark Knight Rises was like 4 hours. It's like, of course, it's not going to be a 4-hour movie, so it gets cut down to a reasonable length. Speaking of, you mentioned Notorious. Notorious, the Alfred Hitchcock film, was a great influence on this work. Brandon Braga, he has said it's his favorite film, and he influenced that, infused that into this story, as well as some elements by Northwest as well. So it gave it kind of a 2000s twist on the material there. Brandon Braga and Ronald D. Moore reunited. We're all Star Trek fans here, so from the writers of Star Trek Generations comes Mission Impossible 2. They also wrote Star Trek First Contact, for what that's worth. I know people have a lot of mixed emotions about the next-gen films, but there you have it.
I'm just going to interject here and say that Generations is better than this movie.
I agree.
I don't agree, but I like Generations more than almost anyone, so there's that.
So a final bit on the Star Trek connections here. Stuart Baird, director of Star Trek Nemesis, he had some uncredited re-editing on this film. This and Lara Croft Tomb Raider, because he helped out Paramount with those two films in post-production editing, because he is a very acclaimed editor. He got the directing gig for Star Trek Nemesis. So there you go.
High five.
Yeah.
No.
And
so I'm gonna go. What?
And then he used Jeffrey Kimball, who is the cinematographer on this movie, as a cinematographer on Star Trek Nemesis. Lots and lots of Star Trek connections here. The production designer... Am I stealing your thunder here? I'm sorry.
Oh, you go ahead. That's why you're here.
The production designer, Tom Sanders, would go on to design Star Trek Beyond.
Cool.
There you go. Keeping it in the family. Yeah. And then finally, this is the only Mission Impossible movie, which I thought it's an interesting fact here, where Ethan Hunt is not disavowed or on the run or working outside IMF. He's actually on a mission. Because I think that's a common criticism of, at least, and personally, I have this criticism of all the new Daniel Craig James Bond movies. Like, can he just go on a mission and do something, instead of being like working outside the organization? Well, he does, Ethan Hunt, this is the one movie, Mission Impossible, to this point, this is this recording, there's been 6. This is the only movie where he is actually just on a mission the whole time and not on the run or anything like that. So,
although the bad guy is a
rogue agent. So they still work that in there. So there you go. There's your flyover of trivia. I'm sure there'll be some other points that come up as we talk here, but there you have it for Mission Impossible 2.
Excellent. Right on. Thanks so much, Zach. I appreciate it. I love your trivia. Okay, I'm going to jump into this with my first topic on this film, which is John Woo himself as a director. And the biggest problem that I have with this movie is John Woo's style. Now, I'm a fan of John Woo. It's been a really long time since I've seen Broken Arrow and Face Off, so I remember liking them, but I can't tell you the last time I saw them. But I am a big fan of The Killer and Hard Boiled, some of his Chinese action films that he's done. And for me, I don't know if there's this much type of this action in Face Off and what's the other one I just said? Why am I just drawing a blank? I just said it like 2 seconds ago.
No. Well, that's one.
No, not Hard Target. Face Off and Broken Arrow. Sorry, Broken Arrow. Goodness gracious. But I don't know if there's this much type of action in those movies, but it doesn't seem to work for me in this film. And I like his style and I like what he does, but to me it just doesn't fit in this type of film. And I don't know why, because, when I watch The Killer and I watch Hard Boiled, like the gunfights in those are like really over the top. But there's something about Chinese cinema where the action seems to always be over the top, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I can't remember the other one right now, House of Flying Cranes or something like that, where there's like
The Raid.
I don't remember what it is. House of Flying Dragons. I think that's actually it. Yeah, where they're like walking on bamboo trees and stuff, and like the gun sequences in The Killer and Hard Boiled. It works in those films, but it doesn't work here. So, Mike, let's start with you. Let's talk about the action in the film.
Yeah, I think it totally works in here, and one of the reasons why I love this is because, it is much more action oriented. But this is the thing about Mission Impossible in general. The reason why I love these movies and this franchise on the whole is because it really has become a director's showcase. I mean, this movie was written by the same guy who wrote the first movie, Robert Towne, Oscar winning, I'm assuming, writer of Chinatown. You know what I mean? And the first movie is very, very much a Brian De Palma movie with all of the trademark De Palma stuff, just with a large budget. And this is very, very much a John Woo movie. And like you were saying, like those styles do not mesh at all. And it really highlights what it is like a director brings to the table. And it gives each of these movies its own unique vision and feel and everything. And when this movie came out, like that was one of the things that I really, really responded to. And it really just sort of like got the wheels turning in my head about how you could do that, how you shouldn't have restraints like style on a franchise, and how there shouldn't be necessarily limits to what a sequel is. I mean, the thing that I always thought of was you could do a sequel to The Maltese Falcon, which does not have Sam Spade or anything like that. You can set it in the year 2000 because, I mean, they've been searching for this thing for hundreds of years. So why does it have to be like in the 30s or 40s or whatever? And you could do it like a John Woo action movie, right? Like a bunch of gangsters have this, a bunch of other gangsters want to try to get it, and they have gun battles to try to get this dingus, as they say in the movie, So why not? Like, go for it. Let's do it. And I love John Woo's style. I think that the action works really well here. Yeah, there's some stuff which is a little iffy in terms of plausibility, and maybe some of the effects don't hold up, or maybe they never even did back then. But I also feel like it's very operatic in a lot of ways, and it's not so much about realism as it is about impressionism. And I think it works really, really, really well.
Zach, what do you think of the action?
I understand everything you're saying, Mike, and I get that this is an episodic series, so why not just have a different, style each time? Although I don't know if audiences were looking for that, because with a sequel, right, you want the original again, but different enough, right? And I feel like this was too different across the board. Like there's almost no threads of the first film in here at all. You have Tom Cruise, and he even looks different because he's got every other movie thing, right? He's got to have the long hair in every other movie. And then Ving Rhames comes back as Luther. That's it. There's no other connection to the first movie. The visual language is totally different. That the style of just storytelling, their objectives and everything they're doing is totally different. So you're already disconnected. If you're a fan of the first movie, you come into this, you're going to feel disconnected in some way. Is that good or bad? I don't know. I think on an island like this, if this was like Mission Impossible 1, people wouldn't have any of these complaints because they would just say, "Oh, well, this is how these movies are." But I feel like because there was like an established aesthetic in the first film, that is like kind of turned off. Now, for me, I think they didn't quite go all the way, like you're saying, Brandon. This over the top absurd action, right? I think they could have gone even further, and it might have like worked better for me personally, because I feel like they were kind of towing the line a lot sometimes. Like sometimes some action scenes would be like kind of normal, like the gunfight or whatever. But then you get to the end where guys are driving motorcycles at each other, jumping off and tackling each other, and then you got people burying guns in the sand and kicking them up and turning around and shooting people like that, like I don't know, like in an Arnold Schwarzenegger, like in Commando or something, right? You're like, oh, this is what we're gonna do. I get it, cool. But I don't know, like I feel like I could have gone even further and it might have worked better for me because the suspension of disbelief is not there throughout the whole movie for me, because it's like, well, all the other stuff is pretty realistic, but this is kind of over the top, like the first car chase, right, which is heavily influenced by GoldenEye. They even said so, but that was realistic enough, I think, for a car chase. It wasn't like Matrix Reloaded. We're on a freeway going the other way, right? It's like, okay, you got a couple cars on a winding road. They kind of slide off, but he saves her and that kind of thing. So that kind of grounds you enough. And then so you get to the end with the absurd motorcycle stuff. So I think, I don't know, I like it, I guess. But then there are a lot of weird things that don't create tension, like the overabundance of slow motion, for example. Like this is
there's a lot of it in this movie.
Like I think it cuts some of the tension, because there are a few scenes that are really tense, and you feel just as tense as you did in the first film, where he's like hanging from the ceiling and all that stuff. Like the scene but they're not really the action scenes, right? It's like the scene at the horse race where Roxborough's coming up behind her, and he's 15 steps away, he's 10 steps away. That's really tense, right? But other stuff, like when Ethan he's broken into the building and he's like looking at the chimeras and the it's like, I don't know, it didn't feel like enough. There was so much slow motion there, it kind of killed a lot of momentum. I think like slow motion works, but I think they overdid it in this film to its detriment.
Mike, what do you think of the slow mo?
I mean, I think that's trademark Woo. I mean, obviously it was a joke back then. It's a joke now and everything like that. He loves slow motion. He loves doves. He loves guns flying through the air and
two guns. In each hand.
Right. And I mean, I think that all of that is funny on the surface, but I think it works. I mean, it's very, very slick, and I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I think in the first film, Ethan Hunt was a little more or less superhero. Like he had glasses. Like in the most iconic scene of the franchise, right? In the vault in Langley, he has glasses on. And this one, he's just like, I'm wearing sunglasses, I'm wearing a leather jacket, I'm a cool guy. Like his whole aesthetic has changed, and it's kind of like, oh, is this the same guy from the first one? But then, who is Ethan Hunt really?
Well, yeah, I mean that is like the interesting thing is like if you look at the first movie, this movie, and then the third one, like his character changes so much that it's almost not the same character. It is just a blank slate. I mean, these movies do have literally nothing to do with each other. Same thing with Ving Rhames' character. It's not like he was all into Versace in the first movie or the third movie. They just did that. That was a character trait which they, added in this one. And I don't really have a problem with that because this thing really sort of is its own thing. I was actually just thinking about this. I was thinking about how, like, I really want to show my family Fallout for movie night on my birthday because it's the best movie of the year. But they haven't, like, seen all the other ones, so I'm like, oh, we should watch all the other ones. But then I was like, you really don't need to watch the first two at all. There's, like, nothing, not a single piece of information which you need for any of those other movies. But I kind of like that. I mean, I don't want that across the board in every, franchise or anything like that. But there is something about, like, when they said, oh, Christopher Nolan is going to be doing Dark Knight. I was like, well, that's cool because Batman Begins is, maybe the greatest comic book movie ever made up to that point. But it kind of bums me out that if he's going to be directing a trilogy of Batman movies, we're not going to see anyone else's vision of Batman in that time period. So where were we going with this? Oh, yeah, the characters being, not at all the same. That's true. It's absolutely
because Ethan Hunt
is
he's James Bond in this movie, right? He romances a woman. Like this is much more of a James Bond movie than almost any of the other ones, right? Because the femme fatale, and of course that's got the Hitchcock influence, like we were talking about. But he meets her, he sleeps with her, they have this connection. He's being Mr. Cool Guy. It's not the same Ethan Hunt for sure.
And I remember everyone complaining at the time that there was not really a team. Like in the show, it was always about the team, and this one it's all about Ethan Hunt. So
right. Now, like, for me, like, I don't mind if my franchises aren't, like, connected like that. Like, I mean, Children of the Corn 4, you can really watch it without watching any of the others.
That's good to know, Brandon. I can watch Children of the Corn by itself.
You can watch Children of the Corn 4 all by itself and not have to watch any of them, and it's a great movie. It really is. But, so I don't mind that. It's just this one here, like, Zach and I talked, I think, back on episode 0, and I mean, like, this movie turned me off of the Mission Impossible movies, which is crazy, because I like John Woo, but this movie just didn't work for me. And, so last summer, when Fallout was coming out, like, I kept not understanding, why do people want to see more? Why do people want to see 3? Why do people want to see 4? Why do people want to see 5? Oh my goodness, there's a 6. But the trailer for Fallout kept intriguing me, so I decided to watch them all again. And so I bought the 5-pack on Blu-ray. I got to 2, and I'm like, my opinion on this movie hasn't changed at all. And I still really don't like it. And so I slugged through it and got to 3, and I'm like, okay, well, this is completely different. And in my opinion, they got a lot better. Now, this time when I watched it with Aubrey, my opinion on it did change, and I actually enjoyed it quite a bit more this time. Like, it's still the least favorite mission